Our Planning Commission meeting, regularly scheduled for the first Thursday of the month, was rescheduled due to the holiday, and so this is July 8th. And we'll start with the pledge and prayer, if you would all join us.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for letting us all be here tonight, safe and sound, and ask you to be with those that aren't safe and sound tonight, particularly over there in the Texas coast. Lord, tonight we've gathered here to do the business of the people, and we need your wisdom, Father God. We need you to align our minds with your mind so that we can all do the right thing. And Father, we ask that you would bless all that we do, and if we make a mistake, that you cause it to come to naught, and the things that we do well, we ask that you increase mightily. We trust in you. We love you, Lord. Thank you for being with us. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If everyone would please silence their cell phones, we would appreciate that. We have roll call, please.
Mr. Engler? Here. Mr. Clemens?
Here.
Mr. Watts?
Here.
Mr. Guidry? Mr. Wax?
Here.
Mr. Dana?
Here.
Mr. Burns?
Here.
Ms. Ferris? Here. Ms. Long?
Here.
The only person not in attendance is Mr. Guidry.
We have called the meeting to order. We'll start by the adoption of the minutes from the meeting dated June 6th.
So Miss Annie and I were just talking about the minutes that we had sent to us. It did not include the discussion that we had about changing the meeting date to today because of the holiday. So we would just need to approve them contingent upon that being added to the minutes, I think, if everyone is okay with that.
Okay, if you could please add those notes. So do we have a motion to adopt contingent upon that addition?
I'll make the
Motion to adopt, contingent on the addition.
I'll second.
Take a vote, please.
Mr. Engler?
I'll abstain.
Mr. Clemens?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Wax?
Yes.
Mr. Dana?
Yes.
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Ms. Ferris?
Yes.
Ms. Long?
I abstain. First, just to make people aware, from our engineering department, we have Morgan Sanchez, and also from the planning department, we have Dee Dee Delat here tonight. So just to give that clarification of who's present from the department. Item number 6 will be Bojangles. It's a preliminary site plan located on LA Highway 43, and it's presented by Kyle Associates and is Council District Number 9. Do we have anyone representing? If you'd like to come to the podium. And initially, I'd like to see, Morgan, do you have any comments regarding?
All of our comments have been addressed. This is just a preliminary, though. I think y'all have probably a full set of plans, but it's just for preliminary at this time.
And they've met all parish regulations to date so far.
Okay. So open the public hearing. If you'll state your name and sign your name, please.
All right. My name is Daniel Harper. I'm here representing Kyle Associates, and we are representing Quick Foods and Bojangles. They would like permission to develop a drive-up restaurant, a 3,200 square foot drive-up restaurant on their approximately 1.5 acre lot. So that's just kind of a quick overview. you have any questions?
Do we have any kind of comments from anyone that's present from the public?
I have a couple.
Well, I'm going to close the public hearing. And now, commission members, if you have any comments or questions.
It's the first thing, your sign's not up. The parish sign's not. I think it was up for maybe 24 hours. It's gone. And I live like a quarter of a mile from this site, and don't get me wrong, I think it's wonderful, but I read where your intentions are to go to a self-contained sewer system, and the town's actually in the process of running a city sewer system south of the interstate. What are your intentions in the future? Do you plan to tie into the town sewer, or?
I understand that project is at least a year out. I guess we can discuss with the developer about tying in. I would imagine they would want to.
I would think so
when
too.
that's available, yeah, because they wouldn't want the maintenance.
The McDonald's has been a disaster from day one, but I actually got my dates confused, and I intended to go talk to the mayor today and see, but from my understanding, the job actually bid off last month, so I think it's coming pretty soon.
We're part of that.
Okay.
Yeah, so we actually, to answer your question, yes, we're planning on meeting with the mayor of Albany to see about tying it in. Right now, we're trying to figure out the timing situation and when that line is going to be ran, but definitely we would love to tie into that instead of a treatment plant. But that's something that we're open right now. The mayor actually just came back in town and returned a call today, honestly. So we're trying to schedule a meeting with her and try to get something going and see timeline, how we can make that happen.
Okay.
So,
Would you please state your name and sign in if you don't mind?
Alfredo Gallardo, I'm with AB Gallardo LLC.
Okay, and you're,
The builder, yes.
you're the
yes,
builder, okay.
builder, yes, correct. So,
thank you.
thank you.
And you're part of it.
Might I add one thing? I'm Clifton Van Cleve with Buffalo Services. We're the ones that are bringing the Bojangles here. The mayor asked us almost 2 years ago when we started this project, would we be opposed to annexation? And we said, absolutely, we'd love to, because we know that city sewer. And it would save us a whole lot of money if we don't have to have that septic system. The only reason we would put that in there is if it's going to be a long time before we could get it open. But yes, we are thrilled to be in the city limits and in the city sewer, and the taxes that we bring the city as a result of it. So.
Okay.
Morgan, would that be something, once they progress with everything, all the requirements, at that point, they could make that decision?
Yes, I mean, they still have time to change their mind on that, or if they can tie in at a later date.
All right.
So they can tie in at a later date, and they still have time to make that decision. This is just the preliminary. They still have to do their drainage, traffic, go through DOTD, and get their final construction plans put together.
Okay. That gives you some clarification. Anybody else on the commission have any comments or questions?
I just wanted to echo what he said about the sign. The ordinance says that it shall be in a V-shaped formation near a public highway. One of your signs is facing, I think, James Chapel Road, and the other one that somebody tore down apparently is facing 43. Look, I went by there today to look at it, and somebody ripped it down, and you see the holes in the vinyl.
I know they were
I had my guys put the sign up. There's actually a RV shop sign, and I wanted to actually the public to be able to view it. And if we put it in the V form, it would have been like obscure. On one of the side would have been obscure because of that sign. They have a little banner that says open, and I forgot the name of the RV RV place, a Britain RV, there's one there, and we wanted the public to be able to see the sign, and that's why we took photos. Now, if somebody went and ripped the sign down,
It's on the ground.
Yes, but we make sure we screwed it pretty good, and we put two new.
It has to stay up through construction.
Yeah, we definitely will. Once that's established, we're basically going to be fencing the area off and basically making sure that's on there. We're going to have somebody there full time, a superintendent, that'll be able to, if something falls, or we'll be able to put it right back up. So
So the sign was placed at the appropriate dates necessary?
We
Okay.
I took the pictures when we installed it. We screwed a lot of screws on it just to make sure the wind didn't blow it off. But you could tell that people are going in the field and just joyriding, I guess, since it's an open field. And right now, we're just trying to, I don't want to put gates or anything because I don't want to disturb the area until we start construction.
Right.
So.
We did receive the pictures that the sign was up when it needed to be. So we do have those on file.
Was it discussed with the planning department that it wasn't going to be V-shaped, and why?
No.
I appreciate the issue that you had and that you were trying to work around. I'm just a little concerned with approving it, kind of adjusting things on the fly, even though it was with good intent. Another question I had, I think this is probably more a Morgan question, maybe not, but I don't see a fence proposed on the west side of the property. Do we require a fence?
It's a wooded
I think it's residential to the west.
It's actually, there's actually a drainage ditch between this piece of property and there's a subdivision that lies just west of that. But it's all grown up. I mean, you can't.
Just wondering if it's like a distance, is it a far enough distance that it doesn't matter, or if we need to talk about a waiver for that, or?
You can't see through it. I mean, you can't see the houses in the subdivision from this lot.
It's a wooded area. I think the ordinance says it has to be conflicted uses. I believe it used to. Wooded areas is not conflict.
You won't be able to see through. It's all grown up, and we don't plan to disturb that drainage ditch. We're not planning to disturb that area.
The kangaroo adjoining it, it would be the same scenario.
It's commercial one side's the highway, one side is the gas station, one side is James Chapel. It's the fourth side that I'm asking about. And I'm just not clear. I know there's some, if it's a certain distance between one property and the next, we don't necessarily enforce a fence. It feels like it's conflicting uses because I think that still would be considered residential property. It's not commercial. There's no commercial development on the west side of the property today. So that's my only concern, is whether or not we need to consider whether a fence waiver would be warranted or not.
Is there a residence on that property?
Not for a little bit. I think if you go down James Chapel just a bit, there's a house.
So the directly adjacent property has to be being used as residential.
Okay.
Is the way our
I don't know if it's all part of that individual's property who owns or lives in that home, if it's two separate owners or if it's...
It's the same family.
It's the same.
It's the same family.
I don't know if it's part of their yard is kind of what I'm getting at. I'm just not clear.
I don't think so. There are a couple of vacant houses since the flood that the owners had, I guess, were rentals or whatever, and they've kind of abandoned those since the flood. And one of the owners actually lives to the very far west, but I don't foresee that being an issue.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, and what is the pleasure of the planning department? Excuse me, commission, does anyone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
I second.
Mr. Burns, you seconded? Okay. Burns? If you'll take a vote, please.
Mr. Engler?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clemens?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Wax?
Yes.
Mr. Dana?
Yes.
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Ms. Ferris?
No.
I'm sorry.
No.
Ms. Long?
Yes. Okay, moving on to item number 7. It's a public hearing for Custom Ecology, Inc., the addition. I'm sorry?
Did it pass?
Oh, yes, I apologize. Yes, it did pass. Pass with one objection. Okay, item number 7, public hearing, as mentioned, Custom Ecology. It's an addition. This is the final site plan. And do we have any comments from Morgan for engineering, please?
All of our comments have been addressed. I just want to point out that on the side, they have a drainage impact study exception. This meets our ordinance to allow for an exception. But I did want to make sure y'all know and point it out. So they're not going to be increasing the impervious area. Other than that, it meets all the ordinances.
All right. Planning Department?
It meets the ordinances that we have in place.
Do we have anyone from the public who'd like to speak on this project? All right.
Sorry. I'll say a couple things. My name is Rudy Sinco. I'm with McLean Taylor. We were responsible with developing this final site plan you have before you. Because of some of the things, meeting the ordinances and having the drainage impact study, this would be the reason for this development to be on your agenda twice, once for public hearing, then once for final site plan approval. It's a modular building that they're going to be putting in on an existing site that they use. It's all located right there at the corner of Woodside Drive and US 190. I'd be happy to answer any questions the public has or y'all have, about this development.
Anyone else in the public have any comments? Okay. Any questions from the commission? All right. So no questions or comments. Okay, well, we have closed the public hearing, and then any other comments. What's the pleasure of the commission?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Sorry, was that you, Mr. Watts?
Yes, I'll second.
Second by Mr. Watts. Take a vote, please.
Mr. Engler?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clemens?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Wax?
Yes.
Mr. Dana?
Yes.
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Ms. Ferris?
Yes.
Ms. Long?
Yes. Okay, that has the public hearing phase of the final site plan passed. Okay, item number 8 is the Custom Ecology Edition, the final site plan. And what is the difference?
One was for the public hearing, and the second one was...
Okay, I'm just making sure that's, okay. All right, so Morgan?
All of our comments have been addressed. This would be for them to actually be able to start construction, though.
Okay. And then, Dee Dee, if anything, from your
The
department?
same.
Okay. All right. Again, any comments from the public? And that was a public hearing. And no comments. All right, close that. Now, any comments from the commission or questions? Any motions?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Take a vote.
Who made the motion?
I'm sorry, it was Mr. Gerald made the motion, Mr. Tanner made the second.
Mr. Engler?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clemens?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Wax?
Yes.
Mr. Dano?
Yes.
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Ms. Ferris? Ms. Long?
Yes. A custom ecology final site plan has passed. Item number 9, Husky Run, second preliminary plat. It's Clyde Cockrum Road. It's Macklin Taylor, district number 6. Any comments from you, Ms. Morgan, from engineering?
All of our comments have been addressed. They're in the process of doing their construction plans right now. So they've done a drainage, they did a past drainage study, because remember, this one was a lot more lots. They condensed it all. So for large lot subdivision, you're required to do a drainage plan. They did their drainage plan. And so this is just them moving forward to fully go into their construction plan phase.
Okay. Ms. Dee Dee, your department.
And yes, they have met parish ordinances to date.
Commission, any questions or comments? We've already done that. Any additional comments? Okay, we'll hear from the public hearing. I mean, this isn't an official, I mean, the public hearing was previously, but did you have some comment? If you'll state your name and sign in, please.
Jeannie Beausarge, 24049 Clyde Cockerham Lane, Denham Springs, Louisiana, 70726. First, let me start by saying that Matt and I have met. We've come to grips with the fact that this is going to pass. We are happier with the fact that it is 21 homes versus the 160. But I did want to point out a couple of things for the council going forward. It does apply to us, but it also applies to some other things. When I got home after the last meeting, I watched it with my husband, who had to work, on video. There was a question that was specifically asked about what are the criteria for a road to be accepted into the parish, and the answer that was given by the council or committee was there are none. Well, I just wanted to point out in the Livingston Parish ordinances 125-77 on page 75, there are very clear guidelines, and this is one of the things that I kept saying every time I came up here. The road must have 5 residential homes. We had 4. The gravel in there must be the right away. I'm not with the 20-foot road service. The road is 16 to 18 feet long. There is no T turnaround or cul-de-sac on this road. It says that's got to be there. There is no ownership and mineral rights signed over by the residents, and the reason that I know this is because I was one of them. The only person that approved it was the man that went to the council and asked that the road be blacktop. He has since passed away. It is supposed to be 1,056 feet long of road length from the middle of Joe May Road to the home that is at the dead end of Clyde Cockerham. It is just a little over 700 feet. I'm telling you this because I can't be the only resident that you're going to run into this with. We've accepted these houses are coming, but legally this road should have never been accepted by the parish and really shouldn't be. And no one has, answered me on this. So I just wanted to point out there is very clear, and none of those things were met when this road was taken in. Now, my other question is, Matt provided me with the drainage. I don't know if anyone up there has ever read this, but let me tell you, not on my top 10 reading list. It is very detailed, I get that. My question to the council is, what happens once they submit the drainage plan? They submit it to you, Ms. Morgan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then from there, what happens? Do y'all have engineers that review it?
Yes, ma'am. I'm the engineer that
you
reviews
review
it.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
ma'am.
Okay. Now, after the neighborhood is built, I'm very serious. I would like an answer. Has anyone ever gone back and done a study after the neighborhood was completed to see if what this plan says is going to happen actually is what happens? The reason I say that is I'm sure there is a master drainage plan and all of this that was done for Arbor Walk and Hunter's Ridge, and I'm sure, I would guess that it didn't say that it was going to increase the velocity and the amount of water that is coming to my property by 2 to 3-fold, which is exactly what has happened. So I'm curious, do we have any checks and balances when these neighborhoods? I believe Mr. Macklin's firm is a reputable firm. I have no reason to doubt that what is in here they believe to be true. My question is, have we ever tested that theory? Has anyone ever looked at that?
I got a question. You asked a question whether anybody ever comes back and verifies what's in the drainage study is actually completed according to the drainage study. It's my understanding that everything is inspected by let me finish.
Let me rephrase. I'm not asking if they do what they say they're going to do. I'm asking if it actually handles the water the way that they have planned on it. I'm sorry. Let me clarify.
Okay. I don't know about that.
Right, yeah. And I mean, it's a good question, guys. I mean, because, we're growing a lot.
Whenever a neighborhood opens up, there is a maintenance bond that is given to the parish, and a certain amount of money, and it's held, what is it, 18 months? So if drainage fails, we take that money and we fix it.
I'm just curious to see, because I do know that with
It does
Arbor
happen
Walk and
occasionally
Hunter's
that the
Ridge,
parish does
it's been
take it.
horrible. That has affected us greatly because of the velocity and the amount of water that now comes from the back of that neighborhood straight down between my property. And again, we discussed the fact we have a large ditch that is considered to be on private property. We maintain it. We talked about the other side of the ditch is real narrow. Matt has agreed they're going to clean that out, but that's something else. Guys, if people aren't maintaining their ditches, if that ditch was maintained, that in itself would help us.
Is that a ditch that you're suggesting that the parish should maintain? Or?
Well, my understanding is the parish won't maintain it because it's on private property. If that being the case, we need to do something about enforcement, because when you have a drainage ditch that goes from this wide to this wide, obviously it's bottlenecking. And well, guess whose yard it's bottlenecking in? Mine.
Well, part of our problem is it's in an unfunded gravity drainage district. So they
I
have
voted
voted.
yes, for the record.
People there have voted not to put any money into gravity drainage.
When it passed for the district that it passed, did you guys hire a certain group just for them? I mean, don't we still have some that are just for the parish in general that come by and clean, right?
Mr. Glatt? You'd be best to answer this question.
There is a public works maintenance that does clean roadside ditches. There are some instances that we're able to get permitted to clean what we call lateral ditches. Most lateral ditches in this parish are cleaned by drainage districts and not by road foremen. So.
It's a different district, as well as the fact that those issues really don't fall upon this body.
I understand that. That makes
just
sense.
to clarify,
And that is something that I'll bring to the council's attention, because this particular ditch drains, it goes down directly to Coyol Bay, right there, the main drainage.
Well, and you're welcome to do that, but unfortunately, there's nothing.
I understand. That makes sense. That makes sense.
You're at the wrong place for that.
I understand.
Are there any other comments?
I don't think so.
If you could say it 1 second. John Mangus, Livingston Parish Council, District 6, 13065 Catahoula Drive, Denham Springs, Louisiana. Last time we were here on the first plot, preliminary plat, you had mentioned about the road and that parcel of property. Was that ever decided who owns that property?
I believe that, Matt, if I'm not mistaken, y'all found out who owned it. They gave permission for him to clean it, which it should be on them. They should be cleaning it,
right,
as long as they didn't disturb their tree.
Okay, so can that be used, because wasn't The problem I understood with that subdivision was the sharp turn from Joe May onto Clyde
That's still
Cockerham.
going to be there. We had some, actually, that was the other thing that we talked about. There was a gentleman sadly lost his life on a motorcycle not just a few weeks ago because of that curve. It's still going to be there, but, yeah.
Will school buses be able to navigate that?
That was one of the other things. Right now, that road does flood. Matt would be able to address that more. I know that where he is going in is kind of catty corner right there from that ditch. It's going to be interesting to see. I'm hoping that road is going to be higher, that the bus will be able to pass. Right now, it won't. I know that. I work at the school. We happen to be the only school-age kids, my grandkids, that are on that road, but I'm not sure once they do that road, how that's going to work. I suspect it's going to be improved simply by where he is saying he's going in. They have changed to where they originally planned to go in.
Good.
As far as they're still going in on Clyde Cockerham.
Right.
But it's not further down where it gets lower and then goes higher. It's kind of in the middle.
So can Mr. Matt, can you address any of these?
I don't think anything can be done about the wrecks in that curve, though, so unless you have any other questions for me, I'm going to sit down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Matt Davidson. I'm the developer. I was able to contact the owner of the property that is right in between our property and Joe May Road, and that took a little work, but we figured it out, and they were definitely agreeable to let us clean out the drainage ditch that runs through the middle of their property, as long as we didn't mess with a couple trees, which we have no intention of messing with trees. So that's been fine. As far as the drainage, I mean, that's really more of an engineering question as far as what's going to happen. I know, very little about how that process works. That's why I hired these guys.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I didn't hear a particular question about the drainage, but yeah, we've done we know we have a full topographic survey of the site, and we know which directions everything drains. We're develop roadside ditches with proper grades and proper slopes, and not to increase the runoff in any one direction. And we're keenly aware of the drainage issue to the west on Clyde Cockerham Road, and we're not going to be increasing.
I think the question was about that road. When y'all go in, would that road be higher for where school buses? I think that was the...
Right. Talking about the road that we're developing?
Right. Once y'all have an entrance going in, is that going to help elevate that road right?
You're saying, if I'm understanding, you're saying the road that we're building?
Yes. Because I think last time, ostensibly, we had an issue with where that road would come off Clyde Cockerham, how sharp it was. I think it was you that if the road to be 18 feet wide or whatever, you might need part of that property, and you didn't know who owned it.
Well, I don't think we would need part of their property for our road because we have plenty of space to connect to Clyde Cockerham. We put the road as high up north along Clyde Cockerham as possible so that any of the traffic was as close to Joe May. But there's still a significant distance, probably 150 to 200 feet worth of property that's owned by these other people. But they did tell me they have no interest in selling, so that's not really an option for us. But being able to come onto Joe May at a reasonable angle with a very wide apron that the engineering department has already said we need to make sure we keep, which we're keeping. So it should be sufficient for school buses turning onto Clyde Cockerham, and of course at the back we've got a cul-de-sac for them to be able to make a turnaround. As far as going on Clyde Cockerham itself, the reason, from my understanding, that it's impassable is not the road width or the road height as much as it is what happens when it rains and if there's water that goes over top of it, which is the purpose of cleaning out the drainage ditch, to try to help make it a little wider to where the water can flow through a lot easier. It's rather clogged. I've personally walked it myself up and down along the drainage canal. So I think just a little bit of clearing should help a lot with being able to make it not bottleneck on Miss Jeannie's yard the way it's been doing. I don't know to the extent of whatever, because our drainage impacts survey doesn't cover someone else's land. We cover what we're doing, but we're going to do what we can to help out. Does that answer your question sufficiently?
It helps, yes.
Helps. Miss Jeannie?
And I think time will tell. I mean, I think once they clean that out, it is going to help some. There may be periods of heavy rain, but it's just going to flood. It's just that low. It is just that low at that corner when you go across. I think that cleaning it out is going to help. Hopefully it'll make it where it's only for closing school because of rain that it'll cover it.
Also, I believe maybe Mr. Clemens had asked a question last time about building up any of the properties. So there's only one of the 21 lots that would need to be built up. It's lot 11. The other lots either don't have a flood zone to contend with, or it's in a location where we would not have to build up in front of or around it. We wouldn't have to deal with that. And so as far as lot 11, I mean, the amount of square footage, you're talking 60 by 60 maybe for a dirt pad. It's less than 0.1% of the entire property. It's very minute. So I just wanted to point that out, that although there may be a little dirt work, we're not building up masses of the property. We're not dealing with all that. It's just lot 11 is the only lot that would officially have a house potentially built in the flood zone where they might want to do a LOMA to amend the map.
It looks like it's kind of a peninsula of flood zone AE right there. If you put a pad right there, you'll wind up with a low spot that's kind of cut off, but it's a cell tower site.
Right.
Site TS.
That's going to wind up being a green space for the neighborhood, ultimately.
Yeah, because that was my other question as far as, I know that we have ordinances about how close property can be residential towers. So, Ms. Delatte, does this satisfy that?
It's a 20-feet buffer in addition to the height of the tower, right. And we have a circle drawn on one of the maps to make sure that we understand that it's going to impact lot 11 and lot 12 in the sense that there would be a no-build zone on part of the property, but there's significant portions of the space on both of those that they would be able to do it and not be within the fall radius 20 feet extra that the parish has required.
What's the height of that tower?
It's 250, what does it weigh, 250?
258 maybe?
58, 51, something like that, and you add 20 feet, so it's 270 something, I think. And so they, Wade has put a circle around everything to be able to see where that is. That's, yeah.
Yeah, because I went out and walked the property, and when I went there, it was dry. And I do commend you for not doing 160.
Did you guys have
anything else, gentlemen?
So you got rid of the detention pond that was on the last drawings, the last set of plans?
Yes.
Do you know why?
Well, yes. Honestly, it was something that we're not 100% sure that we're going to wind up doing, especially to the extent that we had it originally done. The purpose is typically of a detention pond, or because you need it, because you're building all this, stuff which we had to have on the previous one when we had 160 houses. There was a lot of concrete. This is very minimal impact to the property, doing large lots with just 21 homes. And so we may do some dirt work, and there's already a pond in the back, and we may extend some things, but maybe no official detention pond, just some backyard ponds and things like that we may have there. So we'll see what winds up happening. It depends on what the final sales wind up doing. If we need it engineered because we need a certain type of requirement, I suppose we could have McLean Taylor do it. But ultimately, it just boiled down to not wanting to put something on there and obligate us to build and design and do something that we're not really sure we really wanted and needed, if that makes sense.
Morgan, that's something y'all would determine.
Yeah, they didn't need a pond. They didn't need detention.
That's understanding, okay. Any other comments? Thank you, Mr. Davidson, appreciate it. And closing the public hearing. At this point, do we have any comments or questions from the commission?
I did just to readdress the concern about the road being a parish road. It's been a parish road for a long time, apparently. So it's just want to make it clear that we're not suddenly turning this into a parish road as part of this development. It's been a parish road well before this development came along. So whether or not it should be a parish road is a different discussion. Unfortunately, fortunately for Mr. Davidson, that's not really his concern. It's a parish road. So yeah, just wanted to state that.
I got a comment on that. The ordinance that the lady quoted about the 5 residents and 1,050 feet or whatever, that ordinance came about 12, 15 years ago. It's actually voted on by the public for new roads, but I understand the Clyde Cockerham has been a blacktop road for a long time.
Right when 911, whenever it was.
I can't hear you.
It used to be a Joe May address, and it was right around that time, which I want to say, don't quote me, it was around.
Well, it was done before that ordinance was in.
I understand that. I'm just wanted to point out that it doesn't meet the requirements, and 21 houses is better, but 158 going down that one little road would not have worked.
Well, but as I said, it did meet the requirement at the time when the road was done, so that really doesn't apply currently. Thank you. Any other questions or comments by the commission?
I drove down Joe May recently. There's one pothole on the whole road, and it's right in that curve where this opens up. They fixed it. There's new culverts right there. And Joe May Road's in excellent condition right now. I would love to see it a tad wider than it is, but Joe May itself is in very good condition.
That where the motorcycle wreck happened? That pothole?
I don't know if it's the pothole.
It was in our yard. It was right past that pothole. He was too far over in the center, and a car was coming by, and it catapulted him into the tree. I mean, we have wrecks there several each month, pretty bad. In fact, this was the first one that we've actually had a fatality. The curve, I think that people believe they're coming out of the curve, and in essence, they are still in that curve, and they start straightening up. By the time they realize they're still in that curve, it's too late. They're off the road.
I have to commend Robert Duda and his staff, like Stephen Ibarra. People tell me whenever there's a pothole in District 6, and if you just let me know, Public Works does a really good job on that. So they filled the one on Hammock, they filled the one on Joe May. I mean, it was probably 48 hours from the time I notified them by the time it was filled. So
It wasn't huge. It was about this size.
right, but it was right near the center line, and that is a narrow road. So
Thank you. Do we have a motion from anyone?
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
You have that, Mr. Cummings. Mr. Engel, second. You'll take a vote, please.
Mr. Engler?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clemens?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Wax?
Yes.
Mr. Dana?
Yes.
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Ms. Ferris?
Yes.
Ms. Long?
Yes. And the item approved. Husky Run's second preliminary plat. Okay, now, the number 10, Lanyap Center Phase 2, the final site plan. It's on LA Highway 22, and it is in District 8. Have any comments, Morgan, from?
All of our comments have been addressed.
And Ms. Dee Dee, your department.
Meet all of the parish ordinances so far.
Open any public comments? Anyone here to speak on this? Let's see what you have to say, sir.
The plans and the site plan, I mean, would you like for me to go through that? This is the second time you're seeing it.
And does anyone have any questions if they noticed, or anything for Rudy?
What is it, Rudy? Is it just more parking? Is that what it looked like?
Yeah, it's
For a restaurant?
Yeah, it's a proposed building, the fourplex, retail center. And yes, it's concrete parking. It's connecting to the existing parking on the each end. And we've done a drainage impact study, and we're going to drain everything to internal drainage system and detain the water there before it releases into Highway 22. So that's what's drainage. We've kind of done an extensive set of construction plans covering all the utilities and drainage and standard plans, erosion control, and all those aspects of construction, so it can be handed over to a contractor to build.
What is that going to be, like a strip mall, a little strip mall?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Rudy. And Morgan, anything with as far as drainage impact or traffic studies, everything met?
Completed their drainage impact, and this is on a state highway, so that would have been DOT for their traffic.
All that's satisfactory. Okay. And no comments from the public, so we'll close that hearing. Any comments from the commission? Have any motions?
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second.
And I'm sorry, was that, who made the motion?
I did.
I was looking down. Mr. Watts
Yes, ma'am.
made the motion, and Mr. Burns second.
Motion to approve, correct?
Yes, motion to approve. If you can take
Mr.
a
Engler?
vote, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clemens?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Wax?
Yes.
Mr. Dano?
Yes.
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Ms. Ferris?
Yes.
Ms. Long?
Yes. Okay, item 10, the Lanyap Center Phase 2 has passed the final site plan phase. Okay, item number 11, the DDH Campground. It's a final site plan on J.W. Rodas Road, and it's in District 9. Morgan, do you have any comments on that?
All of our comments have been addressed. They've done the drainage impact study. And I believe I made them go to DOT for this one as well. Yeah. Because they're within a quarter of a mile. So DOT has a state law. If you're within a quarter of a mile of a state highway, you have to go to them, even if you're not directly connecting. But all of our comments have been addressed.
Okay, and Ms. Dee Dee from Planning.
They've met our parish ordinances to date.
All right. Thank you. Any comments from anyone in the public or any other departments? All right. Mr. Rudy?
Yes, so we developed the preliminary site plan and the construction plans, final site plan that you have before you. We did do a drainage impact study. This site sits near a large drainage canal, and I think that's why, you know, it's good use for a campground. It's proposing cabins and a few RV spots. We now have located a pond, which would kind of be in the center of the property, which will collect any rainfall, rainwater, stormwater, and then discharge into this canal. Yeah, any other questions I'd be happy to answer.
Do we have any questions? And no one in the public? Commission, any questions? Yes, sir. Mr.
Yes, it says that permanent residence is not allowed. It's against the law. What's the definition of permanent residence? Or in other words, I'll use an example. I'm not going to name a name, but if you go down the interstate towards Hammond, they used to have a campground. You know, you go camping, fishing, paddle boat. Now you have people that are living there 8, 9, 10, 11 months. And is this a backdoor way to have a trailer park? What is, you know, is this I mean, they have nature trails, fishing ponds. What, is this a recreational campground, or is this just going to be called a campground, but then there's a bunch of pop-up campers and travel trailers? And I mean, I'm not going to mention a name, but we probably all know where we're talking about on the interstate going towards Hammond. That used to be a nice place. And
Yeah, I can understand your concern there, and, you know, I've spoke to the owner, and yes, they've allocated some space for a playground, dog parks. They, you know, it's located near the interstate. They want this to be a stopover and for people traveling along the I-12, I-10 corridor, and also for people to spend the weekend. There's, you know, it's no intention for this to be a permanent residence or a backdoor way to.
Well, yeah, I mean, even a trailer park's not technically a permanent residence unless you own the lot. I don't know what the, you know, or people coming from out of town to work for 10, 11 months, you know.
Yeah.
You know, but.
Yeah.
I got a question. You got 18 cabins and 4 RV sites.
Sir?
What is the attraction for people to come here other than just stay a while? I don't see an attraction there.
Well,
There's no lake for fishing. There's a detention pond, but
yeah.
I guess my concern is you got 18 cabins and you're not supposed to have permanent residents. This is the second one that we've seen in the last year. This one's got more cabins than the last one.
I don't know what the other ones you're referring to. You know,
I understand, but I guess my concern is that if people stay in there long term, I think we're getting more into multifamily than we are campgrounds now on this particular development. Another thing, the inspection of the cabins, I guess this goes back to the permit department. Are they going to be inspected like a house? I mean, got to go in and do the electrical. Are they prefab? Are they going to be brought in or built on site? Or
I think they're going to be built on site. Like, it's not going to be built up with fill. It's going to be like on piers.
Yeah, on piers and beams, because this is, you know, the flood zone is fairly high in this area, so there's going to be up on piers, and, you know, they're going to, you know, the owner, what she saw to use this land for. What the attraction is, I can't speak to. Yeah.
I'm just concerned that this is more multifamily than a campground.
So the answer to your question, each cabin will be permitted. They will be having all phases of inspections, and the fire marshal is involved as well. So they have certain requirements that not a normal residential has, because they do have to abide by sprinkler or fire alarms, smoke alarms, according to things that the fire marshal regulates.
But are they going to be prefabbed and brought in or built on site?
Built on site.
Stick built?
He said built on site. We've not seen the architectural plans yet.
One of the comments you made, sir, if you'd made it at the microphone, it'd been better. You mentioned treat it kind of like an Airbnb. That's a hotel motel. That's not a campground.
Right, I see what you're saying. But it was more along the lines of like a rental type of deal and not a permanent residence. Usually with Airbnbs, you can't stay more than a week.
Again, this description sounds an awful lot like more of a hotel with detached units than a campground per se. I agree with Mr. Burns. There's not an attraction there. There's not a lake. There's not a golf course. All this is another hotel.
Is there nature trails or?
I mean, there's some wooded area, and you know, I haven't proposed a nature trail on the site per se, but I mean, there's nothing to say that they you know, the renters, or we're not going to call them renters, or the campers, could, you know, walk around. They got, you know, paved area and pond and volleyball and.
I don't disagree with either of you, but would there be any difference in how we handled it if it was a hotel versus it'd still be a commercial development?
It'd still be a commercial.
So I don't think there would be really any difference in how we looked at it.
And this, it shows the bathhouse. Will these individual facilities also have those accommodations in the cabins, or?
The bathhouse may be for the RV. I have not seen an individual plan if the cabin will have a bathroom. I would imagine.
I'm just curious because the bathhouse is awfully far from the RV locations, if in fact that's what it's there specifically for, but that's really their issue. But
yes, ma'am.
It looks like there's a very large open area to the top left of the drawing, maybe like a couple of acres there. Is that just wooded area that's not going to be
So that's on the other
developed?
side of that larger canal that I was speaking to. You know, there's a big, great expense in, you know, crossing that. So that's why it's left on. I don't know if that's that way. So that's the reason why it's open. You know, I guess if they have some success, maybe they could expand to the west if the ordinance permitted it. But for now, this is all they plan to do.
I guess I see it, there's other campgrounds in the general vicinity of our area within a few hours that I know people for years have rented a cabin at, you know, and I'm not specific on each, but like a Percy Quinn or places like that,
Yeah.
that I would envision. Now, granted, this has a much smaller pond than some of the things those offer, but I don't know how this body can differentiate between the two and have any guarantees. You know, I think it might be out of our purview as far as having the watch of what and how long they are, the residents are. I don't know that falls with our responsibilities.
I have a comment. Which you're referring to Percy Quinn, but all the state parks have a timeline. I think is it 13 days? Like
14 days and then, or 16 days, and you have to, 2 days, it's same thing.
Have to leave.
Yes.
And then you can return. Yeah. Yeah, there needs to be some kind of regulation on this because they already have a disaster of a campground just south of there, where people it's just nothing but squatters.
Yeah, that was my concern. And
It actually has river access.
I mean, there's not much there. They're pretty cramped up. Kind of reminds me of the FEMA trailer parks they used to have. Just kind of jammed in there with not a whole lot around there.
Yeah.
That would be addressed in our ordinances. Yeah, but certainly valid to bring up, for sure. Any other questions or comments? So, what is the pleasure of the commission?
I'll make a motion to accept it.
Mr. Engler makes a motion. Any second? And I want to reiterate, it does meet all the ordinances of the planning department at this stage.
I'll make a second.
Mr. Clements, make a second. We'll take a vote, please.
Mr. Engler?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clemens?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
No.
Mr. Wax?
Yes.
Mr. Dana?
No.
Mr. Burns?
No.
Ms. Ferris?
No.
Ms. Long?
Yes.
It's a tie.
It is a tie.
Tie, the motion failed.
See, we haven't had a tie in years. Years and years. So the motion has failed at this stage.
So if I could, this final site plan, hasn't deviated from the preliminary. If we could guess for the record, so I convey to the client, the reason, that it failed, I guess. Is that too much to ask or from the commissioners?
I think we need to, those who declined it, if you'll express your decision.
I just think there needs to be a distinct timeline on people entering and leaving each cabin that's being leased. Whether it be 10 days, 30 days, I don't know. I'm just saying there needs to be a distinct line where we'll know.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar. I don't know if there is, a timeline on stay for any rental property. That's, I don't know if that's covered in this section of the ordinance.
Well, I mean, if you rent the place out for 10 months, you're not camping. You're living there, So there's nothing clear. I mean, do we have a specific parish ordinance or?
So there's none.
We probably.
Well,
that's.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you
We
get
just don't need it.
snowbirds at all kind of campgrounds, whether it's
Right.
cabins or, RVs. So there's nothing in the ordinance that regulates how long someone could be renting something at a campground.
Yeah, it does say permanent residences.
Correct.
But it doesn't define what that is.
If we could just maybe, my suggestion, maybe just follow state guidelines. I mean, it'd be simple. Because if you go to a state park in Louisiana, you're going to have a guideline to follow.
Mr. Mangus?
Yeah, you had said it was similar to basically a motel or a hotel. What's the policies for the parish? How long can you stay? Because, I mean, we have Best Westerns and things like that, Livingston Parish, and people can't just stay there forever.
Parish doesn't regulate how long someone can occupy, whether it's a hotel.
So that's a state that does that.
To the owner.
I would think it's up, I guess, to the owner. I don't.
I travel a
I
little
don't know
bit.
that.
I travel a little bit, and I stay in Houston for 3.5 weeks. As long as you pay in, you stay. And hotels. Now, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying one bit, but as far as traveling, they're glad if you book.
Well, they have
This is
stay, but I think that's a separate.
This is quite a bit different from a hotel.
No
Yeah, to
question.
lump a hotel and a campground.
I
To me,
think
a
it's a
campground
concern.
sounds recreational,
I think it's a concern, a good concern.
I think it's
I agree with you, but I think it's something that needs to go to our council, and the council makes that decision and helps us get that correct,
An ordinance on
which is you, Mr.
defining
Young.
what
Correct.
an actual campground is.
Right. As mentioned before, that needs to be through an ordinance versus, at this point, this meeting the ordinances required for the construction of the project has no bearing of the actual functional use. Mr. Latt.
Okay, my opinion is the question y'all asking, you're correct, it is a council issue. The vote has been taken. If no one changes the vote, the motion has failed. Their option is they can appeal to the council. That's their option. But all four of y'all on each side make great points. I'm hesitant to call it a campground when I only see 4 spots, so that is an issue there. But I think you took a good, clean vote. I think y'all discussed it well. Y'all seen the problems there. Let the council do their job now.
I agree with Mr. Randy. The word campground doesn't fit this with 18
Looks like
cabins
it's not
and
enough
4
RV spots there to be a
RV
campground.
spots. It doesn't fit RV parks. It doesn't fit campgrounds. So it's more into multifamily. I mean, unlimited stay. I mean,
All right, well, the motion at this point has failed, but Rudy, you are free to go to the council and appeal it, and perhaps have, between now and then, if you have conversations with the owner, they may place some restrictions, I'm not sure. But you are welcome to do that. Okay, thank you for that discussion, everyone. Okay, we have item number 12, the Livingston Parish Airport Phase 1, Part 1A. It's a final site plan. It's on Jordan Lane, and it is in District 6. Okay, Ms. Morgan, any comments or concerns?
All of our comments have been addressed, and the drainage impact study has been reviewed, and we would recommend approval of the drainage impact study as well.
You need the planning department?
Current ordinances have been met to date so far.
Okay, any public comment? We'll open the public hearing. Turns Mr. Eddie Idell, I believe.
Commissioners, good to see y'all again. So just to kind of recap really quick, this is the Phase 1 construction of the Livingston Parish Airport. It is just the clearing and grubbing, earthwork, and detention pond construction with some drainage. You won't be landing an airplane there after this phase. Like I said, I'm going to say we're doing it the way that most developments should be done, clearing and grubbing, earthwork, putting in the detention and the drainage before anything else is done. So that's what this phase is composed of.
Any comments or questions from the commission? What is the pleasure of the commission? Does anyone have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I second.
Mr. Wax, and was that Mr. Watts?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Who seconded?
They did sound alike. She'll take a vote, please.
Mr. Engler?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clemens?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Wax?
Yes.
Mr. Dano?
Yes.
Mr. Burns?
yes.
Ms. Ferris?
Yes.
Ms. Long?
Yes. Okay, the Livingston Parish Airport Phase 1, Part 1A has passed. Item 13, Dennis Mill Tower, site plan with the waiver request, Spillers Ranch Road, District 5. Ms. Morgan, any comments? And what is your...
All of our comments have been addressed, and they've gotten us all the paperwork we need for towers, but they are requesting 2 waivers. There's a residence on this property that falls within their buffer, and it also falls outside of 2 property lines, their buffer zone.
All right, Ms. Dede.
It meets the office requirements, the parish, with the exception of the possible waivers that would need to be granted on the setbacks.
My name is Steve Ballmer. I'm a former fire chief in Denham Springs. I am the owner of the property where the cell tower, where we're wanting to put the cell tower. I own the residence that is within that buffer zone. I do have copies from my neighbors that the property owners that also fall within that setback that approve of the construction of that tower. I'm not sure if we gave these to y'all yet.
I have copies.
Okay.
You want the original?
Original.
Give me the original.
So would those fulfill any requirements as far as anyone that could have objection to the waivers?
Check, because I don't want to misspeak.
Is that these letters?
Well, that was the original.
Those are the copies. We got the originals.
We did a second go-around that are notarized.
Okay.
So they've actually, the property owners have actually done it twice. I'm Jeff Dominic. I'm a with GeoNet Services. I represent the tower company and can speak to any concerns about the tower that y'all might have. One thing about the setback that is really important is this tower will have a 50-foot break point. And what that means is that 50 feet from the top, if the wind speeds get such that, well, the biggest pressure on a cell tower is wind loading, because those antennas are panels, and the wind loading on those panels is the biggest problem with cell towers. If it gets up to a certain speed, probably 140, 150 miles an hour, depending on the number of antennas, the top 50 feet will break off and fall to the ground. And what's left is just a lattice tower, and the engineers tell me it would take 300 miles an hour to knock the rest of it over. So by the time, so the true fall radius of this thing, and most towers like this, is really 50 feet. By the time the rest of the thing falls over, there's nothing left for it to fall on. Everything's gone.
Yeah.
So, but that's an important point, is, like I said, 50-foot break point.
We open for discussion.
Any other comments from the public?
The only other thing, I think Steve's had a number of property owners, they have a real hole in their network out there that have really poor service, as well as this will be a FirstNet installation, which provides a dedicated network to first responders as well as Homeland Security. There's a hole in that network as well. So, but he's had neighbors stop by and comment about how glad they are to see the service coming in to that area.
If we lose our cable or Wi-Fi, you're standing out in the yard trying to get a signal just to be able to report an outage. And it doesn't have to be a disaster. It doesn't have to be a flood. It doesn't have to be a storm. If the parish comes through and digs up your cable in the ditch, you're back in the same boat. So.
All right. Any comments?
I'd like to add, this particular project is one that the state had called on as part of an effort to be able to help with first responders and LoSEP and things like that because of the service in that area.
Well, they have a contract with the federal government to provide a nationwide FirstNet network. And this is a result of both 9/11 and Katrina, because the first responders couldn't use their cell phones, because everybody else had the networks flooded. So there's now, the FirstNet is a dedicated network just for first responders and Homeland Security. And it's important, especially now that we're in the beginning of hurricane season.
Okay. Any comments or questions?
I have a couple. One is, I understand you represent the cell tower.
Yes, sir.
You do. You're talking about this being a collapsible tower, but many developers have come before us and talked about collapsible towers, and we've asked to see a video or documentation and proof that these things are.
Well,
they are collapsible towers, and we never received any.
I was supposed to have a letter from the engineer stating that there's a break point at 50 feet.
Well, I want to see the technology of it. Well, how does it work? It doesn't make sense.
Well,
I mean, a tower. What's the break point? How many miles?
They build weaknesses, thinner metal. There's thinner metal in the structure at 50 feet. It's been engineered so that at a certain wind loading, with a certain wind blowing on those antennas, the tower breaks at that point. The whole tower, it's not collapsible.
I understand what you're saying, but what's the wind speed that this top part would fall over?
Depending on how many antennas are on it, what the loading is, and it may be 130, 140, or if there's three carriers up there, each with 12 antennas, I would imagine probably 130 miles an hour. But again, if we can get a letter from the engineer, specifying that. But either way,
this is a monopole, right?
No, it's a free.
You've got guy wires?
No, it's a self-support tower. It's the Eiffel Tower without the.
It's like the Eiffel Tower, and it's kind of like.
It's a lattice,
three or four
freestanding lattice tower and it'll, like I said, the weaknesses are built in at 50 feet with thinner metal.
But going forward, even after this, I would like to see the technology on that. And we've asked for it, and we never received it.
I mean, this is Roan Towers. I'm sure they've got, again, the engineer, we're supposed to get a certified letter from the engineer, a stamped letter from the engineer. Engineer registered in Louisiana.
Yeah, well, I want to see the technology of it, not a stamped document by somebody. I mean, I tend to agree with what people say, and I think you're telling the truth. I just want to see the technology of it. But the other thing, the three people here that signed the documents on the tower, are these documents recorded? Have y'all pre-recorded these at the clerk of court? Well, this is if these people, I understand what's going on, but if these people ever sell their property, then it's an encumbrance on the new buyer, unless there's something that shows up in the courthouse saying that they signed these documents. They don't know this. If somebody bought the property and built a house, they don't know it unless they run a title search and they find an encumbrance on it if you don't file it with the courthouse.
These issues, this is actually at the back of these properties in wetland areas, but I understand what you're saying. It is technically an encumbrance. Not that they couldn't, I mean, I don't think there's an ordinance that says they couldn't build back there.
Well, they have to build on piers. It doesn't matter. I'm just saying, if they did, it'd show up. It would show up on a title search.
Building in the theoretical fall radius of a tower, I don't think there's an ordinance against that if you know the tower is there. In other words, you know what I'm saying? I don't think does this.
If somebody bought the property to the south of it and bought a parcel,
if the tower is there
going to the south, that's pretty close to the tower, and they built a house there, they're not going to know all the technical details that you know, and it's just they should be aware that this tower could fall on them. That's all I'm saying. And the way you do that is you file an encumbrance with the clerk of court, and then anybody buys that property, then it would show up as an encumbrance. That's all I'm saying.
I guess what I would say to that is anybody buying that property can see the tower. It's right there. You know, they will know.
I'm telling you my opinion, okay, about it might be your children that buy this property, and you look up at the tower, you don't know how tall it is. I mean,
right.
I'm just saying it should be filed with the clerk of court.
Okay.
Would that be a problem for you doing that?
No, we don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
If I may, me personally, I don't have a problem with the concept of a designed weak point. I've done plenty of it myself in engineering. And understand that you design the point that you want to break. They do it with cars. I mean, we do it with a lot of things. I'm not really comfortable with us asking the council to issue waivers for the laws. I would be more comfortable with asking the council to examine the ordinances for cell towers, bearing in mind that they have engineered weak points. I'm just not really in favor of waivers.
Even though the property owners that are affected are okay with it.
The problem is, we say we have a law, but we're just not going to follow it. And at what point do you draw the line? That's my problem. I would rather that we re-examine the ordinances concerning setbacks for a cell tower based on the fact they have a breakaway design. I think, personally, that's what I would do.
You know, some jurisdictions have done that.
Yeah.
In fact, there's one I'm working on, Rankin County, Mississippi, which is close to where I live. Their ordinance says that the setback will be determined by the county engineer along with the tower engineer. Just like what you're saying, the two engineers will set the setback for that specific tower, and that's probably speaks to what you're saying.
Right. But I am moved by the fact that we have a dearth of service in that area, and it is pretty important with the health, safety, and welfare to have some sort of service.
The problem is that the properties in that whole area are just, there are no properties big enough to support a tower and a full radius around it, you know. And even if there was, there's no way, you know, a company could afford that, because that would be too much property to lease, you know, for a cell tower.
And the ground drops off rather rapidly as you move south. That's the high point. Spiller's Ranch is low.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've got a
Any other
couple
comments?
things. The letters that you gave her today, are they the same letters as we have, but just notarized?
Because they have a notary block on them. And
Okay.
those turned out so dark, we did a different background to make it. Did y'all didn't give them the second set, I don't think.
So these say that they're okay with a 250-foot cell tower, but your drawings show it as a 255-foot cell tower.
That was a typo. The AT&T's antennas will be at 250, but with the lightning rod, it's 255. But yeah.
See, this actually even shows 255 to the tower, and then another 10 feet for lightning rod, so 265 total. I think is what these drawings show.
250, 255. It should, the letter should have been 255, but it's
on sheet C3. It shows a 255 feet to the top of the steel tower, and then another 10 feet.
Yeah.
Lightning rod.
69.
So, and I guess there's some ambiguity there in the ordinances that whether it's 255 or 265 is what you have to draw your radius, but it does.
Well, the ordinance calls for 30 feet beyond the top of the tower. So the circle that we drew is 285.
So it actually says from the equal to 100% of the height plus 30 feet, and that should be from the perimeter of the tower. So if it's a 30-foot or so triangular shape in the plan view, you're really looking at over 300-foot radius, which would start getting into the properties to the north unless you were able to shift the whole thing south. So I drew it out, and it probably hits another 4 properties to the north.
Because of the perimeter.
Yeah, the ordinance actually says from the perimeter
That was
of the
an
tower.
oversight on my part, because I didn't catch that, and I did it just from the center. So it's 15 feet.
So you add about 18 feet to the 285. Whether it's 285 or 295, I don't think that's very clear in the ordinance, whether it includes the lightning rod or not. But I think the other part's pretty clear. And I see there's 3 letters that we got from 3 landowners, but the property just immediately to the south is listed as Winder Properties.
That's Mike Wynn.
Okay, so that was one of.
That is one of the.
So we have a letter from James Wynn. Is that the same?
Michael James Wynn, yes.
Okay.
Actually, Junior.
Yeah. The letter just says his address, which is actually a couple of doors down, a few other properties in between your property and that. So that makes sense. And there's another property right behind Travis' parents' property that didn't show up on the tax rolls.
That's Winder property. He owns all of that.
Okay. Yeah, it didn't have a owner listed on the tax rolls. So.
And then it's just these that you're.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those
I was
would
wondering
be
about
the
that,
ones.
too.
My main concern is to the north. If you take the true radius that you're asking for a variance on, you're actually incorporating probably 4 properties to the north, the back side of their properties, about the same amount that you would be encroaching on the Thomas Ramey property to the east. But so if you were able to shift it to the south some, you may avoid that.
I'll have to check, there's definitely room on the lease area to move it south a few feet. The question becomes the engineering and the foundation and how far along they are on that. But I mean, if that's going to make a difference, we'll do whatever we have to do because this
You'd just be asking for four more residents' signatures and letters, right? Potentially.
Yeah, or move it.
Right. So how much leeway do you have as far as area to still get that same service area from that tower? How far can you go to find another piece of property that would be all on one piece of property?
The way these, and that's my job, is to find property. That's my main purpose, finding property, evaluating zoning and floodplains and wetlands and airspace and all of those things. In this particular, in every situation, I get a set of coordinates, and the company will say, find us property within a certain distance. And back in the old days, in the 90s, that distance was a mile. But that's when we had bag phones, which were 3-watt phones. Now we've got, handhelds that are 0.6 watts, whatever they are. And the networks are much tighter. So like, a quarter of a mile is often what I get. Sometimes it's a matter of 800 feet. Find us something with 800 feet. In this particular case, their coordinates get right on Steve's property. And so I approached him, and he said yes. So, that was the best spot for that reason. But there's also the issue out there of wetlands. I mean, there's wetlands on his property. We had to move away from the south property line, away from the corner. Looked at different places. They may not be wet, but legally they are wetlands based on the types of plants and the type of soil. So, So we didn't wander around looking for other properties, because AT&T, his property was dead center, and he said yes. So that AT&T said this is the best spot to put this thing to serve to fill the hole, and so it was. Didn't always work out that way.
Mr. Brady, I got a question. You mentioned other parcels to the north that don't show up on this map.
Right.
How did you research that? You went back to the clerk of court, or?
I pulled the geoportal maps that the tax assessor uses.
Yeah.
And
they don't show up on this map.
They don't show up on their documentation, no. I actually just copied it and printed it out.
As an observation, this map is inaccurate.
No, they didn't think it was necessary to put on there.
I know,
Yeah.
but
That's all.
Yeah, I think the way he has his radius drawn currently would not affect those properties, but I think that that's drawn incorrectly.
I'm not sure which map you're looking at, but
On y'all's drawings, I think it shows, per the ordinance, you have your 500-foot, I think, drawing also.
It's 255. Is it 250 or 255?
Look, you can actually see it on C-1B does show all of those properties to the north. It would be probably properties 5, 6, and 7 on his drawing.
right, I identified all the property
Yeah.
owners within 500 feet.
And that's part of the ordinance, I believe. You have to do that as within 500 feet. You have to identify all the landowners.
So what is this blue circle green?
That's just off of the antenna.
That's the 500-foot radius.
If you change your breakaway point, don't you shorten the distance?
This green circle
The
is,
distance is statutory.
Okay.
I mean, that's the problem, is the distance is tower height plus 30 feet. It's nothing to do with the break point. And that's what he was talking about, is maybe having
It probably should.
the ordinance be a little, not so,
If you had guide wires, maybe it would be more, it would maybe
doesn't matter.
change.
The ordinance doesn't
Okay.
specify a monopole or a self-support tower or guide tower, I don't think it does. The guide towers are not allowed everywhere. with guy wires.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Mills. This green circle on this map right here, is that the collapse zone? Is that the tower plus 35, plus 30 feet?
No.
What is this circle? What is the circle
The
mean?
ordinance, Mr. Burns, the ordinance says that they have to include a drawing or identify all of the landowners within 500 feet of the cell tower. They just have to identify them.
With the
500 feet?
That's part of the ordinance, that they have to identify those property owners. They don't have to notify them, to my knowledge, or anything. They just have to identify them on paper.
I got it.
And so that's what I was saying. Some of those, though, may end up in that.
I agree.
In the other part of the ordinance that says the 100% of the height, which I believe is 255 plus 30.
Right.
And if you draw that from the perimeter, what it calls out from the perimeter, from the perimeter of the tower, adds another 18 feet or so.
Could be lots 5, 6, and 7.
So it could be somewhere in there, 4, 5, 6, 7.
That's a detention pond. It's not likely they'll be constructing anything there.
Not on the backside. But they're asking for a variance, and we're not getting letters from.
Yeah, that's my failure. I missed the thing about the perimeter. I guess I have so many projects around the south.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I think we're at the status at this point of the evaluation of the waivers primarily. Again, something that Homeland Security and emergency services are a priority to weigh against the waivers. We do have the waiver letters against some of those involved, but as Mr. Wax has pointed out, there are now some new facts that have come to light that might make adjustments.
Well, the emergency services is extremely important, but we should always practice safety first. And when we start building cell towers or anything else, that outweighs rushing to judgment and doing something that's not quite right.
Well, again, I think weighing the 50-foot break point is something that the ordinance does not, it's an all or nothing ordinance versus the structure is engineered a certain way that would be different than, not necessarily the next structure that would be applied.
Ms. Cathy, I'd like to ask a question, please.
Yes.
As far as the waiver, and may I speak now? Is it still public? Or do I need to wait?
No, you can speak.
Okay. As far as the waiver is concerned, unless something's changed, the waivers have to go to the council to approve a waiver, correct? So this will not be a vote yes or no, except to send a recommendation to the council with our approval or without our approval, correct? Correct.
It would have to be contingent upon a waiver, but it may not be contingent upon all the waivers that it needs. That's the.
If any waiver, we do not have the authority. It has to go to the council. Right. So we can vote on this to pass or not to pass. It still goes to the council. Right. Because they can take it if we deny it, and if we approve it, we only make a recommendation for the approval.
Here's another option. We take no action, and after 60 days, it is approved by default without a waiver.
Right.
Well, I'm sure, but
So we do need to take a vote.
I think, as we know, that we've made a recommendation prior to this, and it's gone to the council, and they make decisions on the tower having a breakaway and stuff, just to let you know, in the past. So we have the authority to vote yes or no with the recommendation to the council, and they make the final say.
Right, they take that into account. And it might be.
Madam Chairman, if I can just make
Certainly.
one speak. Mr. Engler is correct. You could vote yes or you can vote no. Either way, it's got to go to the council. But depending on what passes, they either can appeal it If you vote no, they're going to have to appeal your decision, then ask for a waiver. If you vote yes, then they just got to ask for the waiver. And that's the procedure according to Mr. Jerome. So
So it could still be declined completely by the council because the waiver wouldn't be available, or they can find an alternative method, I guess. But the, if in fact that would happen, you probably would want to get other letters and make sure your numbers are correct for the letters that have been signed, to make sure that all that documentation is correct when you meet with the council's questions. You'd have the correct answers, I would recommend. But
I was under the impression that you was looking at considering moving your tower south. Is that not right?
We can't move it very far because we run into wetlands. I mean, we've got a very small area on the property, but maybe a few feet, maybe enough to matter. But I'm not sure that we're not too far down the road on the engineering to do that, that the cost of having to redo everything might make it so that we just need to go and talk to the property owners and see if we can get letters from rather than moving.
How long would it take you to make a decision whether you can move it south? 2 weeks? A month?
I can find out tomorrow, or tonight maybe, but I know that, again, it's been engineered, surveyed. We've done a soil boring to test the soil so the foundation can be engineered. And each of the, a freestanding tower has 3 feet, and they've done borings at each of those feet. You're an engineer, I think.
You have to do new soil borings if you shift it 30 feet?
I don't know.
At each one of those?
That's the question. I don't know if they'd have to rebore if we shift a little bit. I don't know what the tolerance is on that. I have no idea from an engineering standpoint.
And even, like you mentioned, the 18 feet that would maybe compensate enough where the new residence is affected, it might be, sufficient
For
to
me,
get
the
it.
easiest thing is to make the tower shorter.
I have a question. What if we send it to the council to review with a recommendation that maybe they do their due diligence and require the neighborhood properties to sign, be recorded in the courthouse. That way, in the future, if anybody has any issues with it, it'll be there. I don't know.
I think that's a couple of separate issues, though. So if there if there are more property owners impacted, I'm assuming we're going to catch that, Ms. Morgan, at another point in this process, right? So my only real concern here is, are we going to end up sending y'all twice? Are we going to end up sending you to the council for a waiver for some of the properties, and then at some point in the process have to send you back to the council for more waivers for other people, for more letters that y'all got signed? Because I'm just trying to streamline that a little bit.
This is this is 2 waivers. You're waiving both of those requirements. So before he gets on the meeting, he needs to go and redo his radius and see if he can get those letters. And he can present that to the council showing that he's extended it. But technically, the waiver is still...
Would waive it, all of it, yeah.
So. I think, typically something like this is not per property. It's either waived or it's not. In other words, it's either waived or it's not. That's what she's saying, yeah.
So I think if we did decide to approve this, it would have to be not only contingent upon the council granting a waiver, it would also have to be contingent upon verifying the radius, the impacted property owners, and receiving any letters from any other property owners that were identified as impacted.
Could that be done as a contingency on getting a permit? That those things have to be provided?
Those things would have to be provided and approved before it even gets out of the planning department phase.
If you could get the corrections made and have the letters done prior to the council meeting, you could have that documentation with you, or they could possibly say we would approve the waivers as long as you have this. If you didn't, if you still had 1 or 2 homeowners you weren't able to contact.
Another thing also, Ms. Kathy, Commission, the council has the correct opportunity to say, we accept the engineered breakaway and don't need anything outside.
Correct.
That is, our council said 30 feet plus, but they can pass saying the breakaway will not go out that, exceed that.
I don't know how old that is. The height plus 30 feet, that may be 30 years old, you know.
Well, it's something that the council would do. I mean, that's their authority.
That would take place at an ordinance level, and you know, there's a timeline. It would take some time.
I'm sorry for...
If they were going to change the setback requirement based on a breakaway, they would have to change the ordinance, and there's a timeline built in, I think,
but they
4
can,
weeks.
They can sign a
They can waive it
They
based
can
on
waive it
that.
and do it Thursday night if they want to.
They could.
Right. Change it later.
Mr. Delat?
Guys, because of the logistics, there's going to be another planning meeting before they can even get on a council meeting. If y'all want to send them back,
No.
there's not.
Well, we're on
Why?
Thursday.
Oh, y'all on this Thursday?
Yes.
Yeah,
My
unless
mistake, I apologize.
We'll be taken off if we can't, you know, solve this problem. We'll just be taken off the agenda.
Could you bring
And
it back in?
if I could speak, we had to end up doing an addendum to this agenda because of the severity of the state calling, saying they needed to get this done as soon as possible. So we did an addendum to get it on the agenda and made sure we sent everything to the council where they would be on the council agenda for Thursday. So if you think that you cannot get, whatever direction you go, so if you send it for them with the stipulations, you would just want to make sure that you could get whatever the requirements were that the commission set forth, or we need to pull it from that agenda and put it on another one.
And with the urgency of the state, you know, it kind of puts a different dynamic on it. We don't have to send it with that requirement. We can send it with a recommendation that we recommend these things be done and taken into consideration so that they could say, well, we'll pass the waiver based on the breakaway, based on the existing letters, we'll pass it with the waivers, but then they have requirements that you can integrate. You at that point would have time to integrate those into your final plans, whatever their recommendation.
So if I understand, it's going to be hard for y'all to pass this. You know, I know you're trying to help the state, you're trying to help all of, but the questions that's been brought up by Brady and been brought up by some of the rest of them, he needs to get that fixed, in my opinion. Now, can he fix that before the council? I don't know that. But
I'd like to wait 30 days and defer to 30 days. Give you time enough
he
to
bring him
fix all
back
your
before y'all
problems.
for next month.
Right. Mr. Wax, how much shorter would the tower have to be to fit the radius?
Probably not much, 20 feet shorter or so. I guess you probably need some clarification on whether the ordinance includes the lightning rod or it's just the steel structure.
Yeah, I think it does not include the lightning rod.
It's kind of unclear. I think it says the tower equal to 100% of the height of the tower, and your drawings call the height of the tower at 255, and then an additional 10 feet. So
does it have to be for efficacy? Does a tower need to be 255 feet, or could it be 230?
Well, I'm not an RF engineer, RF radio frequency engineer. I mean, AT&T wanted to be at 250. Now, if we brought it down 5 feet,
Maybe shifted it a little bit, and
you know, these are things that I mean,
right.
These are engineering things that I've got to find out.
Right.
Well, if you looked at the plan on the tower, it showed that there was several proposed customer sites, future tenants.
Oh, there's always.
The lowest tenant was at 190 feet. So at worst case, I'd say you'd lose a possibility of one tenant.
Well, it's not just that. It's AT&T being the charter tenant, and they're the ones that this is being designed for, and it's their coverage and the FirstNet coverage. So it's, again, the RF engineers said they wanted to be at 250. So
Yeah, it doesn't feel like things we can adjust on the fly tonight.
No, it's not. We can't engineer. That's right.
If it's that
It's yes or no.
issue, the state thinks that something needs to be done, I think we need to just send it to the council.
I agree. I'd like to send it to them.
Make their call.
Sure, that's
For 30 days. and
You don't,
fix your problem.
that's up to you.
I'm ready for a motion, Madam Chairman.
All the questions answered? You have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve contingent with the councils making their decision on those waivers. Let them talk over the breakover point.
I'll second it.
I'm going to amend that motion.
Substitute.
I want to amend the motion to also include the developer works with the planning department to file the letters that you got from all the landowners in the clerk of courts for all people to see forever. That's my amendment.
Do you have any problem with that amendment?
No.
Hey,
That's fine.
I'm sorry.
My amendment.
Did my second or
And
count?
as long as they have, yes, your second counts, as long as you have no
You need to have a
objection.
second on the substitute, right?
The,
You can't just amend it. You
Right.
have to have a second on the substitute.
Vote on the amendment, then vote on the
Well,
motion.
You got a substitute. If somebody seconds it, if that passes or not, then you can go back to the first one. But right now, what he's
Is there a
saying, when you
second
say
for his
amend, you're going to
amendment?
second.
Just amend his motion, that's all I'm
Well,
doing.
you're making I've already seconded.
You're a Robert Rules of Order expert. I think he's coming to the mic right now.
He's right again. Do it two ways. He can change his motion to reflect what Mr. Burns said, or Mr. Burns has the floor if he gets a second. He can have, you vote on the substitute first, and then if that passes, then you can get back to him.
Let's do
which
it
is
that
why
way.
when I said,
I'll
or do you
amend my
approve?
motion to include
Yeah,
Mr.
which was
Burns's
my, that
comments.
was,
Yes.
yes.
I'll take my
And then your
second
second,
Thank you,
yes.
kind
No, I'm
sir.
not seconding.
You won't second it with the
That's why I
amendment?
Good suggestion.
I seconded the first motion, and that's
Well,
what
he
I was saying.
amended it, that's why I
Well,
wanted
then,
him to
I'm not
say, so let him
seconding
second
that.
that. Okay.
Gerald can.
Can we require that, though, as the planning commission? Can we require somebody to put something on file with the courthouse?
We're sending it to the
To the
council.
council as a.
We're
Are
sending
we
it to the
asking the
council.
council to ask them, or are we, are we asking
We're
them?
sending it to council for a waiver, a recommendation.
Right.
That's it.
Madam Chairman, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think in the ordinance, it does have for a waiver that on these towers, it does have to be filed with the clerk of court. I think Mr. Burns is
We tried getting one,
I know you tried that
we
last
tried
year.
about,
Yeah.
what, 2 years ago, Ms. Kathy?
Yeah.
We worked hard to get that through the ordinance committee and the council, and we weren't successful.
one of the
So
problems-
what we're going to do
that-
is try to bring it back to the ordinance committee and address that issue.
Because I do remember that being brought up.
Yeah, we did that about 2 years ago.
Okay.
One of the issues there is that, that appearing to be an encumbrance on the property is purely a function of the ordinance, and not a function necessarily of the safety of the tower. And as things change, and the ordinance may change, and, if the ordinance changes where it becomes a function of a break point, then you've got a perceived encumbrance that's not really an encumbrance. That's just a
Anymore,
thought.
right.
Well, look, the letter that the landowners signed don't have to say heights and distances involved. It's just an encumbrance on the property when somebody else buys it. It's there. That's all it's for.
Discussion's over. We're
It's
trying
just
to-
for, it's just for conversation, I mean, for, for them to be aware. So the motion being,
Except contingent upon the council issuing the waivers, however they want to handle that, with the letters, including for the additional properties that might
with the
be impacted.
recommendation that the council ask them to file that.
That's correct.
Okay. And
I heard two different things, so I want to
And
make sure I'm
my
clear.
it has to be the recommendation.
And my amendment.
That's what I
You
said.
said letters from residents. Did you say letters from the additional residents, or filing with the courthouse? Because you said one thing, and I thought I heard another from Mr. Burns, so I'm making
that's-
sure I heard
Mr.
what
Burns
you
wanted
said
to file with
properly.
the courthouse, so letters
Right.
from
Any letters.
So what is your motion now?
to accept contingent upon the council's issuing of waivers with the recommendation that they would issue the waivers and also take into account the extended height with the letters to the
And any letters required be filed
with letters filed with the courthouse. Is that it?
So
Mr.
basically,
Gerald?
if they say the existing letters versus added letters,
But is there an ordinance saying that they have to file?
we're just saying the recommendation.
We make
that
a
they-
recommendation to it.
If they determine that the height does extend the line, that they would handle it as the intent.
We're just making the recommendation that those letters be filed.
The council meets Thursday, so are you going to try to have this ready for Thursday?
And we'll just get off the agenda and shoot for the next one. I mean, we'll do what we can do. I mean, you know, that was, the whole plan was, you know, to go Thursday if possible. And if we, you know, if we can't do it, then we just get off the agenda.
Okay, Annie, we have the second, and we have a second from Gerald.
In addition, we need to make sure that the letters does have the corrected feet on it.
No.
Whenever y'all get that.
Yeah. Okay, could you take a vote, Ms. Henning?
Do I need to second this motion?
We already did.
She used her name. She did.
Mr. Engler?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clemens?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Wax?
No.
Mr. Dano?
Yes.
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Ms. Ferris?
Yes.
Ms. Long?
Yes. Okay, this motion has passed. In the tower, you can take it to the council, and as the motion presented, and it's possible that if they approve them, it would just be contingent that you have to provide everything for it to be approved if you didn't have the time. Is that correct?
I'd be able to go and then provide it to y'all.
Before you could move forward after the council, if they grant the waivers, you would need to bring the
Before we go to permitting.
correct.
Okay.
So
Before you
wouldn't
could get
necessarily-
finally approved through the planning and zoning, you would have to have whatever the stipulations were in the waivers provided.
So you wouldn't have to have necessarily the letters in hand?
So they may decide that we don't need the letters. I mean, they could.
Right, and then if
So
they
we'll just wait and
do,
see what they say. Okay.
you can't, if they could say contingent upon you having this, we can move forward. So you're given a little more time to get that if needed, if it's needed.
This is just my only project.
So, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the parish attorney is not here, so we will pass on that. Ms. Morgan, any comments?
No comments.
Okay, and the planning department, any comments?
No comments.
Okay, Planning Commission, I have a couple of comments to make. I think you'll find at each of your seats, you would find a printout of the state statutes, and they are addressing the Planning Commission and the Planning Commission responsibilities, primarily regarding the master plan. So I just want you all to review this and be familiar with the fact that that responsibility does lie with this commission. And it, you can review this information, and you'll find the specifics as to how the state law is actually written. So if you'll all review that and understand what the process actually is, make sure this is a refresher for everyone.
Madam Chairman, if I may?
Yes.
The Master Plan Review Committee is a citizens group, and our intent is that we will be reviewing the master plan and making suggestions, but those suggestions would come here. That is our intent.
Yes, thank you. Any other comments?
Ms. Kathy, I have the state that was handed out, put together in a little binder. If everybody would like it, I can bring it to our next meeting.
Okay.
It's really like a notepad if y'all would like them.
Do you have it in electronic format?
It's on, if you look up your revised statute on state of Louisiana, they're there.
Oh, okay.
You can see it on your telephone.
Yeah, I've got those here.
Yeah, but I do have a and I've had several of them. You let me know you want one, I'm more than glad to give it to you.
I think that would probably be helpful. Appreciate that. Any other comments? Okay, thank everyone, and we are adjourned.